if you wouldn't mind, just start maybe with the maze and just introduce yourselves and your family. And then one thing, we just kind of told our love story, but to get to know you a little better as we kick off, give us a 2-minute version of y'all's love story. How did you meet? How did you fall in love and all that good stuff?
I appreciate that we got to practice just a few minutes. So we're Chris and Christy Mays, and we have been married for nearly 15 years. And our first date, let me just confirm this, was 17 years ago today. So that's pretty yeah, we have 4 children, and just living here in the community and growing in the Lord, and just been thankful for the fellowship at DVC and the relationships God's given us. So we're thankful to be here. And we met. We just talked about this, that's right. So, so Christy and I were a part of the college ministry here at Denton Bible Church, and we were at UNT, and Christy had recently become a believer on a mission trip in China. And very strange story, different story. But she came back to school, and we ended up on a retreat together, and we were sharing, people were sharing about what God was doing in their lives. And Christy shared that she had come to faith, and that she had stepped out in faith for the first time, and moved out of her apartment where she lived with her girlfriends, and she moved into the dorms to share Christ with the other students. And she was pumped up, and God was doing awesome stuff, and she said, "So who's with me?" And I thought, she is awesome. And so she recruited me to move into the dorms and do evangelism. So that's how we met.
All right, my version's right today, just for the record, because she just deferred to me. So I don't exactly remember how many years ago it was. It was about 02. Okay, not 02 years ago, but 2010. I was at teacher in service, and which was great. And she'll tell you I was late. I'll tell you the meeting started early, and I looked out. It was physical education in service, and I peered across the hardwood floor, and I started getting those cartoon heart eyes, And I asked my friend. I said, "Who is she?" And he said, "I don't know." And I said, "I need to meet her." And so she proceeded to, I asked her out to lunch. She said no. And that's true. And anyway, she called her mom after that. And her mom said, "What are you doing?" And next thing you know, we're married. 2-minute version had to kind of cut the list.
I'm sure it happened exactly like that.
It's a nutshell right there. So, no, I proceeded to call she worked at Kanakuk. She arrived down to Plano ISD through Kanakuk. I arrived the same way about 6 years earlier. And so she just happened to be interviewed by the person that I served under at Kanakuk. And so I called him, and he said, "Marry her before she gets a chance to know you." And so I did that, and she said yes, and we got married at the Kanakuk K1 Chapel, and it's been pure marital bliss ever since.
I'll be honest. For me, it was love at first sight, and for Gina, it was like love at 82nd sight, something like that. We met at Texas Tech in Lubbock. Get him up. And she had 3 roommates she was living with in a townhouse, and this was December of '95. Remember cassette tapes? A few of you. A buddy of mine was dating her roommate, and so we were returning a cassette tape because you loaned them and borrowed them, right? Especially in college when you don't have any money. Can I borrow that cassette tape? So we were returning a cassette tape, and Gina opened the door, and I never met her, I'd never seen her, but for me it was I was like, whoa, shit. This is the most beautiful girl I've ever seen, and the angels were singing, there was music playing, and I just knew this is the girl that I'm supposed to marry.
And you just have to know, it was finals week, so my roommate and I had slept in late. So I was wearing like what I had slept in, and my hair was a mess, and I had no makeup on. So, yeah.
So I made it an effort to get to know all the girls, especially Cheetah, in the townhouse, and I would frequently hang out there, and I don't know what you say. I kind of wore on you. I don't know.
Yeah, he kind of grew on me like a wart.
So I guess within the next year, August 11th, 96 to be exact, but we started having conversations and possibility of dating, and so she agreed, and I actually moved back home, so we kind of had a long distance relationship for about a year and a half, and when we were married. So 18 years? No, 17 years. 17 years.
Awesome. Well, and by the way, again, questions from the audience, feel free to write them on sheets of paper and run them up, and we'll just continue to, but I've got a question for you. We all know that we, coming up in a different upbringing, we bring different things to the table. How has your upbringing brought things positive and negative into your marriage?
Can you repeat that?
Absolutely. How has your particular upbringing brought things positive and negative into the marriage that you guys have had to process and kind of deal with and compromise on?
I think for me, my parents are godly people and have a great marriage, so that was modeled for me. Just my dad is super sweet with my mom and does everything for her and goes and fills her car up with gas and, just treats her like a queen. And so I kind of had those expectations going into marriage, because that's what all husbands do for their wives, right? So that was kind of, and he does. But I think, that first year or whatever, just expectations, that's kind of.
Get your own gas.
He would get it, but I just think expectations was a big thing that I had to learn at the beginning, of just not setting my expectations unrealistically. Yeah.
But mine was kind of a mix because I didn't grow up. I wasn't a Christian. I went to church. My brother and I, my mom, we went to church, but it was more of a. It was dead. I mean, it was a dead deal. I grew up with secular values and the whole dating thing in high school, and as I started to begin college. I mean, my goal was, hey, I want to meet somebody and get married, but just more of the worldly way, the secular way, and it wasn't until I became a believer that I started to look at marriage in a new way. And in fact, I can remember going to a wedding that was when I watched it, and I was a believer. I think I'd been a Christian for maybe a few months, and I saw this couple get married, and I'm like, wow, that is incredible. That is the way this is supposed to be done. I need to read the Bible, this thing they call the Bible more, and I want to know more. And so this is back in 95, I think. No, 94. I'm sorry, yeah, because I hadn't met you yet. And stumbled upon Monday Bible study called Metro in Dallas, and Tom Nelson was the leader. I didn't know really who he was, but he taught on the Song of Solomon, and I said, that is it. That is it. That's what I'm going to study. That's how I'm going to do this marriage thing, this whole dating thing. And so my views, I guess how I was raised, kind of got changed drastically, obviously for the better. And I've tried to live, kind of treat Gina according to what that book teaches. So.
Emmy has 3 sisters and 1 brother. I have 1 brother, older. There's testosterone in my house. I think he asked about our upbringing, and kind of how that has helped or hurt. Manland was pretty prevalent growing up in my house, and I'll never forget when she moved in. We shared an apartment. Neither of us were in that apartment at that time, but she started moving her stuff in, and moving her stuff in, and moving her stuff in. We'll just start with the bathroom. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed watching her move Sterilite container after container, Rubbermaid, you name it. And I just sat there, jaw dropped. And I thought beforehand, oh, no problem, I'll be able to get one drawer. And I didn't say anything, and she's just, doing her thing. And I said, hey, potential first fight here, right? And I go, do you think that maybe I can just kind of sort of a little bit, maybe just get one shelf in the medicine cabinet? Oh, sure. Because I just saw that space dwindling. I still don't know what mascara is. All right? She says she needs more makeup. I'm like, just go get it. All right? What's the difference between mascara, eyeliner, and eyeshadow? I don't know. I don't really care. But just that upbringing, I never had such a loss of real estate in Manland in a short amount of time. And so you just kind of learn to just work through it. But that's the thing that comes to mind about how upbringing shaped. And there's more to it. You just think about that, and every guy's seen that happen. Every guy's, whether you were raised with sisters or not, you just kind of go, how much more is it? Every time we go on a trip, am I right, guys? Well, sorry, don't answer that. It's Valentine's Day. It's how much more do we have to pack? But anyway, it's just kind of, you got to learn to move through that, and that was a world rocker for me.
I knew you were going to bring that up. I was raised, so my mom was Baptist and my dad was Catholic, and that caused a lot of division. All of us, there were 5 of us kids, we were raised in the Baptist church, and Sunday mornings, the devil, it was really hard, and I knew that I wanted to find somebody that was on the same page as me. And I had my grandparents that I looked to that were just always sweet on one another. And my parents were very sweet toward one another as well. But I too, those cassette tapes, the Song of Solomon, I grew up listening to those too, and I really, really took that in, and I prayed for that, and I desired that, and when I found him, I knew the one. My Solomon?
I only have one wife.
So I grew up in a home where my parents would both say that they were believers, and we went to church and we were there all the time. But I never saw it be real. I never saw it be really, truly authentic in their lives, that really was their passion and their life desire. And then we lived very much in duplicity. And so my life slowly began to spiral down into what could have become complete devastation and many potential ways that I could have totally decimated my life. And then came to college and continued living in that duplicity of life until I went on a mission trip and began to see these people that I spent all summer with and thought, they are so weird, what's the matter with them? And it was like God told me, they actually know me and they love me and you've never known me. I thought, but Lord, I've done all these things, I've gone on all these mission trips, and straight from the Bible, he says, but I would say, away from me, I never knew you if you were to stand before me today. And from that time I knew it's all in or nothing. There's none of this like you say you love him, but you don't really live it, you really don't. And so I knew I'm all in. There's nothing but Jesus. And so if I am ever to get married, if God ever has me to get married, he's going to be all in. And so when we first met and we first started talking, and I heard his passion and his love, and that he was truly all in for Jesus, and was so excited to come and share Jesus on the campus, and we would enjoy just time together, talking about him and sharing Jesus together. And I knew that was what I wanted our lives to look like. My life, if I were to ever be married, I knew had to be completely focused on and built around Jesus. And our home and our children, I didn't want them to ever leave with that question that I left with of like, so you say you love Jesus, but really? Because it doesn't look like it. And so I knew I want our children to leave knowing my mom and dad, maybe I don't want him, but man, they know him and they love him. And I can't deny it. And so that was something that was so important to me that definitely shaped my home and my desire in our marriage now, I'd say.
So I was raised by a single mom, and she did everything for my brothers and I. I think, and she says it was because it was just easier to do everything than to teach us. And so I came into our marriage with an expectation that I would come home and do pretty much nothing, just show up to the table. And Christy, one of the cool things about Christy's home growing up is, getting ready for a meal and things like that it was a team effort. And so I brought in, we've had some tension there that, only just hear the bell ring and come. So we're still working that out.
All right, we've got a question from the group here, and again, feel free to write your questions and raise your hand, and I'll bring them up to us. But it says, husbands, what do you do each day to strengthen your love and respect for your wife? What do you do each day to strengthen your love and respect for your wife?
One of the things that our premarital counselors challenge us to do, which I think we've done, thankfully, by God's grace, pretty faithfully through the years, has been to pray together each night. And a lot of times sometimes it'll be just laying in bed, sometimes we'll be on the floor just bowing down before the Lord, but we'll just pray together. And it's had the effect of multiple effects. One, we hear each other's heart because we know what's on the heart and the mind of the other one. And if we've had some sort of conflict throughout the day, we feel guilty to go before God if we're not reconciling, and so we end up working it out before we pray. And early on, we would stay up very late with bitterness because we knew we were going to pray together before we went to bed. Neither one of us wanted to apologize. So. But that's been wonderful.
What do you do, Chuck?
It's an interesting question because it seems like there's just a one right answer. I think there's a lot of things that you can do. I think whatever it calls for that day. I think there's some days where Gina needs me to help with the house and clean. We do the dishes and help maybe sweep and help get the kids ready to go to bed and things like that. So I think a lot of times acts of service is what she needs, and so I try to do that best I can. Sometimes it's just because she works too. She works part-time as a physical therapist. I think sometimes she just wants to come home and kind of tell me about her day and tell me kind of what a hard day it was. So just listening to what she has to say, and just kind of maybe feeling her pain a little bit of what she sometimes has to go through with patients, and just the grind of work. So I think it can be different. Just whatever the day calls for. We like to laugh a lot, so I try sometime during the day to make her laugh, even if it's at my expense. It's all at my expense. The other day, we got a school teacher. We have to wear ID tags that go around our necks, and I couldn't find mine, and I'm running out to the car. It's not out there. The car's already running. I run back inside. I'm late. I can't find it. Gina, you know where my eye tag is? You're wearing it. Oh, okay. I knew I was wearing it. I just wanted to make her laugh. And so, just whatever the day calls for.
I think the one thing I'll try and do is the last words on my lips every day are off my lips. I don't know what the phrase is. I try and tell Emmy that I love her. As my eyes are closed and my head's slammed against the pillow. I love you, Emmy. It's the last 3 words I try and say every day. Now we work at the same place. Now we work at Legacy Christian Academy, and I can go down to her hallway, and I can see her with kids, and so I can go down and see her in her element. I can bring her lunch, but then when I walk in the door, we try and have some positive touch. Some positive remark. I'll walk over to her, kiss her. Hello. I don't do that with everybody. But things like that. I'm a huge believer in positive affection or positive touch, just to let her. So I know where she is, one, so she knows where I am. And that's a way that creates a little separation between closeness of friends. She knows I don't do this with anybody. I'm not a huge hugger, but I'll hug her anytime.
And I'll just jump in here real quick. Something that God's convicted me of through the years is a lot of times when I drive off to work, right, and my time with the Lord is in the morning, by the time I finish work, I'm fairly cooked, mentally, emotionally, and so as I'm driving home, if I don't pray and prepare, if I don't spend time asking God to give me grace to be a dad and be a husband, and I just roll in, then chances are they're not going to get the best of me. And so just really trying to be intentional with that drive home. And in fact, one time I had actually stopped. I had parked like 3 minutes from the house, and I had pulled over because I knew it had been a hard day, and I just really wanted to pray that I wouldn't carry that into the home. And next thing I know, I'm praying, and it's my wife. She said, "What are you doing?" I'm parking something in front of some strange house, And I said, "Baby, I'm praying for you." But just being intentional. Just being intentional of preparing my heart to be physically, emotionally, spiritually can't be. But I'm going to need God's grace to do that because I'm tired. So, all right, we've got a number of questions about kind of physical intimacy. And so just throw it out to the panelists. Whenever you have these, this is a family, and we want to engage in things that are real, but we also want to do it in such a way as to be very honoring to the Lord, because sometimes we can cross that line and we don't want to. So I'm going to ask the questions, and you can just use the discernment in what you're willing to share. But this one says, speak to the importance of loving your spouse physically and communicating likes, dislikes when you are intimate.
A good friend of mine named Cole Johnson said,
Go ahead, I'm curious what he told you. To be very, I guess you're throwing that to me. Emmy and I were just a little backstory. The first time I told Emmy I loved her was right before I asked her to marry me. Because I told other people I loved them before, and we all know how that panned out. But I just chosen to reserve that phrase for the woman I planned on marrying, and at that point I was willing to tell her that I loved her. And a little bit more about Emmy. she came down from Kanakuk, and she had made a covenant with God to not kiss anybody until she married him. And so that the physical realm for us was off limits. And there were times where I had to just, I would walk out of her place and I would say, I'll call you on my way home. You know, and just because I had to say, you know, there wasn't any bye, I'll see you later. It was like, all right, get out of here. Because she asked me if I could support that, and I said, if I can't support that promise, I will walk. I will walk, and a lot of that has to do with, a lot of that comes from, Song of Solomon as well, and just kind of things I had gleaned from Tommy's teaching there. But to revere that promise, and the last thing I wanted to do was break a promise that my potential spouse had made with God. So intimacy, fast forwarding to after marriage, the consummation of marriage, intimacy is a wonderful thing in the right manner. And what we learned, though, very early on is intimacy was to complement the rest of marriage and help the rest of our marriage. Too many people, I think, fall prey to getting married because of the physical desires. And then they're forced to construct their marriage all around that to fill in the pieces. And so we learned even intimately early on, hey, this isn't the reason we got married. That's good and fine and well and all. But man, if this was the foundation of our marriage, we would be hurting for certain. And so, it definitely has its place. I'm probably not one qualified to talk about that because I'm no counselor or anything like that. But we know that it has its place appropriately.
So, and likewise, I think one of the things that God has really blessed in our relationship was the fact that we let our dating and our courtship be about our souls connecting, reserved, physicality, maybe more extreme than some people probably think we're crazy. Our first kiss was on the altar, so when he said, man and wife, that was our first kiss. So, which I don't think really man, you guys are Branch Davidians or something, but
Self-control otherwise.
we knew the physical attraction was definitely very strong, and that wasn't going to be a problem. So we just wanted to connect spiritually in those other ways. But I think early on, and this comes from premarital counseling, I think our premarital counselor said communicate about your physical relationship. So we were just very open and honest, as we learned, about our physical relationship and just learned one another. And I think that's, been a blessing down the road. So
We've read books together.
yeah, we've read books about intimacy. And
Talked about it together, and outside of that time of intimacy and during time of intimacy, to just communicate well with one another.
Yeah. Physical intimacy, I think Gene and I, I can remember early on, Gene and I, when we got married, we immediately moved to Galveston. Her family, she grew up in Fort Worth, I grew up in Dallas, so when we got married, we would quite frequently make trips back and forth. And so, we didn't have kids, obviously, we, newlyweds and, for those first few years. And so, I found it a great time to talk about that. And so, just to kind of back up what you're saying about communication. So early on, we talked about sex and what we both expected and didn't expect and things like that. And I think, we've been married 17 years now, and things happen. Obviously for men, a lot of times it seems like sex is maybe more of a priority. And, sometimes when you hit bumps in the road like that, you need to communicate. And sometimes as a man, it's hard to talk to your wife and tell her, how you feel and your needs. And so if you can't do it verbally, I know one thing that I did, a couple of years ago is I wrote her a letter, and I told her, how much I cared for her and just, my needs, and it was great. We talked about the letter, and when you're writing a letter, you can just let it all out, everything that you wanted to say. A lot of times when you're communicating verbally, it doesn't come out exactly the way you want it to. So, but in a letter, you can take your time and say exactly what it is that you want to say to her without holding anything back. What do you think about that letter?
If I could add something, go.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, and I think I appreciated that because I think when you're having a conversation, your tendency is to jump in and go, and not really stop and listen and let him say everything that he wants to say. So in a letter, there's no response until after you finish the letter. And so I think that was a good way, to do it. And I think I guess it can happen either way, but I think especially for women, we're so busy, we're just trying to keep everybody alive and all the other things that you have to do that it's like, I'm not thinking about that. So it's good for him to let me know that when I'm totally distracted by keeping my children alive. So however that needs to be communicated, and a letter is a great way to communicate that. So.
We did it at the marriage retreat when we wrote that letter. I'm like writing it. I'm like, not done yet, but read it. She's like, no. I'm like, yeah, read it, because it's. I love to share that stuff. Emmy probably doesn't have to tell me very much. Like when she says, "How was your day?" very rarely is it good. I just here it was, here it is. But so the letters. When we did that at the marriage retreat, I think I'm gonna have to magnet that thing to the refrigerator for her to read it, even though she's not supposed to. I guess I think that's a rule. But with Emmy's commitment, the covenant she made, the purity contract that she made, she never teased me. She never teased me. She never was like, there was. It was always modest, always humble, always appropriate. It was never like, it was never graze my cheek and then look at me with those sparkly eyes and say, "You can't kiss me." She never tried to bait me there. And so I always knew that her commitment was authentic. And because had she, I would have made more mistakes. So.
And I think a lot of times discontentment in the physical area can be born out of unrealistic or even sinful expectations that are brought into the area that weren't derived from Song of Solomon, that were derived from sinful sources. And so when we're praying that God would bless that area, are we praying for something that honors God? And I think we need to pray that God would make that area pure, because it is a gift. It's from Him, right? It's meant to be enjoyable. It's meant to be pleasurable. We need to be very careful about the expectations we bring into that and what's the root of those expectations. Because God needs to be honored there too, because it's His gift. And so praying through that, even as a couple, can be very helpful in finding the root of the discontentment. All right, another question. How do you deal with your anger? How do you deal with anger towards your spouse in marriage? How do you deal with anger towards your spouse in marriage?
I've struggled with anger just in general, and it can be directed at Christy or directed at anything that it's all about control, and it's all about idolatry and wanting my way. And when I in a moment when I can realize that what I'm feeling or what I'm dissatisfied about, it's about me, and it's about needing to get my heart right with God, and it really doesn't have to do with her. that is to me a big key to dealing with anger, giving it to God, and dealing with it between God and me, and realizing that it's really has nothing to do with her or whatever else I'm angry about or directing my anger toward.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when I'm angry or upset or whatever, it is kind of like you said, I mean, it's a selfish thing. You know, I'm angry because he didn't do this that I expected him to do, or because he's, said this that hurt my feelings, or whatever. And so I think a lot of times the issue is, like you said, it's more with me. And so what I've learned through 17 years is that when I have those feelings, I need to take it to the Lord and pray for him. And maybe it is him, maybe he did do something that he shouldn't have done or whatever, but if I will take those feelings and go to the Lord and pray for him, and pray for me too, me and my heart right, but then just pray for him, then a lot of times that either that thing that was so important to me at the time becomes not so important anymore, or God will change him, which he can change him way better than I can change him. So
I would say for me, I realized that I wouldn't allow myself to get angry because I thought it was wrong. I'm a people pleaser, and I just didn't, if I felt angry, I would stuff it away. And really what it is it's like when your body gets a temperature, a fever, when you're sick, it's just indicating something. So pay attention to that and pray through it. For me, writing it out, writing a prayer to the Lord is really good for me, to put it out on paper, and then you can see what the root of that is. And yes, of course, if you need to go to them and let them know that it hurt me, communicate that for sure.
I would probably add, if anger is a struggle, a constant struggle, that it would probably be wise that you have somebody in your life that holds you accountable. I can remember about 10 years ago, I used to meet with a group of guys once a week, and one of the mornings, one of the guys spoke out and said, "Guys, I hadn't been too good to my wife lately. I've been having some anger issues." And once you listen to what he was talking about things that were not little petty things. I mean, they were of concern. But our response to him was, "Yeah, you can't be angry with your wife. I mean, you've got to fix that." And we kind of counseled him a little bit, and we prayed for him. So I think if you're going about this alone, then it would probably be wise that you share some of these struggles with some trusted men. Obviously, I'm talking from a husband point of view. But that you have a group of guys, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 that you meet with, or if you don't, I know we have some mentor couples in here that would love and be willing to meet with you. Call one of them up and say, "Hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me?" And so don't try to just fix everything within your marriage by yourself, you and your spouse. Sometimes you do need to ask for help. So.
I think I don't fully understand righteous anger. I understand a lot more of self-righteous anger. I don't know if that's even a phrase, but regarding accountability, I think that's fantastic. Oftentimes when we get angry, oftentimes when we lash out, I think that for us as guys, I think there's a lot of pride associated with that. How am I supposed to lead? It has to do with perspective. It has to do with expectations. It has to do with how we think we should appear. The majority of my anger comes on the basketball court. It's just where it is as a coach. If my guys don't perform to a certain level, I feel like that's a reflection on me, where it is. You know, it's not what I know, it's what my guys know. But I feel like people judge me. And when I make Christ my why, when he is my why, I can go back to that. So if I'm angry about that, why did I write that email? Why did I say those words? What was the condition of my heart? Who am I trying to please? You know, like Christy said earlier, who am I trying to please? If I'm trying to please Christ and I'm yearning to live for him, it's crazy how we don't seem to get as angry about things. Our perspective just kind of changes a little bit. And if that means losing a job, losing a game, apologizing, then we need to be quick to do that.
You know, one of the thing that makes these panels so awesome is the willingness and the vulnerability and the transparency that you guys are willing to show, because some of these questions are just not easy. So here's a question: what has been the most difficult season of your marriage, and how did you get through it? What's been the most difficult season of your marriage, and how did you get through it?
Not without my wife's help, I can tell you that. I can certainly tell you that. I might have a different idea of when it was more difficult for me than it was for Emmy. But I can tell you that there were some trying times for us. And she sought wise counsel from other people, not from me. And she was a listener. Again, the coaching, the expectations, all those things. When you don't win, that starts to just beat you down. Who am I? I'm not a winner, I'm a loser. And you lose that positive vibe, that positive self-talk that, you just start doubting everything. Am I a good coach? No. Am I a good dad? Probably not. Am I a worthless husband? Yeah. Okay, well, there's a yeah, that's positive. But she was just solid there. And I'll forever be indebted to her. But a difficult season, I think I've mentioned this before, 17 and 54. Win 17, lose 54. That's not positive. When an assistant principal tells me that I was hired to coach X's and O's and not values. Okay, well, we're obviously not, it just rocks your world. And then you come home and there's peace there. But how does she get through that? So anyway, and might be able to share more, but by the grace of God, the one thing that I had during that whole time is I never considered punting the faith. So that is God's grace and his sovereignty. So I'm talking too much.
We were debating our hardest season. It's like they're like the three, runners up. But we think that the winner would be 7 years ago. Your dad had a stroke. So about 7 years ago, my job was changing. Had a boss just on me. The numbers weren't good in the sales job. It was just a challenging time in the market. Had a lot of stress that I was bringing home. And we had a newborn, and our third child was a newborn. And Christy had postpartum depression, and she was just dark. Even had suicidal thoughts, and which is totally not like her. If you know her, she's mega Pollyanna. So she became like Edgar Allan Poe. Totally. Yeah, it was crazy. And then in the middle of this, Christy's dad had a massive stroke, and it was a rough time on a lot of levels. And the Lord was with us through that, but at the same time, I'll say that He did not relieve our misery immediately. And it was a process through which the Lord carried us. And in retrospect, we can see that He was certainly carrying us and providing for us throughout that time. But
the community, getting to be the significance of being in community and having other people around us who were there, who saw and who said, this is not okay, this needs help, or this needs help, or we're praying for you, how can we help you, what do you need? That was so significant to us at the time. So much prayer.
I would say something that has really helped us is, we have an enemy who hates marriage, and something that we would say to one another, that's a hit. We're just, the marriage is taking a lot of hits right now, and to think of we're a team, and there's the enemies maybe attacking, but we're a team, and we're going to stand strong, and our foundation is rock solid, and it's not going to be shaken. And so, when obviously we're seeing one or the other maybe experiencing something, but again, to have accountability and community and to be a united front, that we are committed fully. And then it can get you through, just knowing there's an enemy that's out to get us, and we're not budging on that. So.
I think for us, one of the hardest times in our marriage was, I don't even know how long we had been married, maybe 5 years or something, and he had just finished school, finally, and that was a struggle too. So he had finished, and so I think, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh great, he graduated college, so now he's going to get a job, and then we're going to be set, and it's going to be great. And so we got a house. He didn't have a job. I had a job, but I knew that we were wanting to start a family soon, and I knew I didn't want to work full time. And so we bought a house on one income, my income, but he didn't still have a job. And so it was just that season of him still not having a job and out there looking at resumes, and he's overqualified, but yet underqualified, and no experience, but not the right experience, and overqualified because he has a degree and he doesn't need a degree, but now he needs a degree, but just that whole whirlwind. I know a lot of y'all have been there, and just the finances, and then we got pregnant, which was great, but he still didn't have a job. And how are we going to do this? Because I don't want to work full time when I have a baby, and when I'm on maternity leave, I will have no money because I'm not working. And so just that whole opportunity to really trust God to provide, and to not allow that trial to divide us, and for me to learn to not put pressure on him. You have to get a job. You have to get a job. So anyway.
And I was like, well, come on, I got you pregnant. I'm doing something. Just doing what I can. It was amazing, because I had a degree, and I felt like, hey, this should be an automatic thing. Your degree equals good job, but it didn't. So I do remember praying a lot, and I just had to trust. And I remember it was kind of towards the end of summer. The school year was about to start, and I was hoping to have a teaching job. And I had sent out resumes all summer, maybe 30 to 40 different schools in the area, probably as far as 20 miles away, and it looked like, well, kind of like what God wants us a lot of times to be in a situation where, yeah, it's all up to God. And I think there was a point where, God, you're gonna have to make this work, because it's not. I can't do it anymore. There's only so many letters I can write. And so I remember it must have been maybe 2 weeks, or maybe a week before school started. I got a response. I got a phone call from a principal in Sanger. So out of 30 to 40 schools that I wrote letters to and sent resumes and all of that, I got one response, and they hired me. And so it was
The Friday before school started, Monday,
But, you know, God is faithful. God is faithful.
You know, with that, we're foolish to believe that our marriages aren't attacked. You know, Emmy touched on that. But at some point, you know, like right now, we can look back on things. I was at my prior job for 10 years, head coach for 3 of those years. Didn't know why God had me there. That was my Nineveh. I came home and told Emmy that's my Nineveh. And I got to drive back there tomorrow? You know, and so it hit me, it hit our marriage, it hit her, it hit our kids. But, you know, last year I received a letter from a parent, a heartfelt letter. You know, oftentimes I thought we don't get a lot of positive letters back. Long story short, one of my players that was a senior last year was abused at daycare 13 or 14 years earlier. His parents didn't trust people, didn't trust authority, didn't trust school teachers. And I got a letter saying, thank you for the job that your staff has done. You gave us a reason to trust people again. And I'm sitting there, I'm not thinking I did that. But the reason I tell you that is because that was one, you know, nugget right there that I look back and go, Lord, maybe this is the whole reason I was here, was for this guy. Maybe that's the whole reason. And God was gracious enough just to say, you know, here's a reason. Here's a little bit, you know. And Emmy she just whispered, she had been praying for that. And we'll look back on that and go, God knew exactly where he was planting those seeds. He knew exactly. Oftentimes we think, I don't go on here, but it's not very often that people say God has a plan when things are great. Oh yeah, God has a plan. It's then when things are bad, well, God has a plan. And it's like almost attached to some type of suffering. But God has a plan even when things are good. You know, we're just living the dream instead of the nightmare, so to speak. Hang in, seek wise counsel. We've got teachers here, pastors here, that can point us in the right direction, that can give us resources and those resources share a similar worldview, a Christian worldview. And we forget about that. You can feel lost, you can feel on an island, and even an island from your spouse. Seek wise counsel. Drew can point you to somebody if it's not him, you know, and so go for it.
You know, one thing I think that I hear everybody saying, and one thing that Dave actually said a long time ago, but has been so important for us in our marriage, is to really, really, really recognize and understand that we are on the same team. You know, we do have an enemy trying to attack us, but we are on the same team. When things are tight financially, he knows. He sees it. You know, he doesn't need for me to be like, how are we going to get this? What are we going to do for that? I can just stay quiet and pray because he already knows. He doesn't need for me to tell him that or point that out. Or, you know, one thing that's been so encouraging too is that, and in those times even, or all sorts of times, he is looking out for me. He does care for me. He is really loving like Jesus does, and I had never seen that prior to our marriage. I didn't experience that growing up, so that was something very difficult for me to adjust to, that you mean the husband really is going to look out for the needs of his wife and care about those things, and she doesn't have to tell him all those things? Because I always saw, like, you got to speak up. If there's something you need to make sure you make your request known, because nobody's going to help you, you know. And so to really see and trust and understand what it means, the idea of how beautiful submission is and how sweet it is to really rest and know He is looking out. He does care for me. And I don't need to ask or make my request known or anything, because He's probably already even thought about it before I have. And He's aware of those things. And just to not let that be a division between us, because we are on the same team, and to really walk through that each day when things are difficult. But it's sweet to struggle together, to know, like, well, we're in it together. It'll be fun. It's an adventure.
Well, as always, we get more questions than we do have time. But, our prayer and our hope every time we do one of these panels is that God would move a couple of here in their transparency to say something that touches you where you are. And that God would give you encouragement and hope that these are real marriages for people with real struggles, that God is real too, and they're pushing through, and they're fighting. And so you're not alone. That's why we're here. That's why MBF exists. Bless you guys. Enjoy your marriage today. It's Valentine's Day, and we will see y'all next Sunday. Thank y'all so very much. Thank you to the couples.